Hello, Collin. Welcome to what I think we are tentatively calling the Delay Cast.
Oh, is this right? Oh, sorry, I was delayed in my speaking. Sorry. It's contagious. That's why
Yeah.
it was a little bit for me to talk there. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's quite all
But
right.
you know what they say though. A delayed response is bad, but if I don't know I don't know that
A
mean
delayed response is good, but a
uh,
quick response is...
forever
So
bad.
anyways,
Yeah.
you're Collin, I'm Curtis. We're back. It's been a few weeks here. But in that time, we waited long enough for all the delays to get out of the way. So we'll run through everything that isn't coming out in the first few months of next year, or mostly. And we'll just, and then we'll talk about some video games we're playing. How does that sound?
I love video games. You know, also I love
Great.
more than video games. I love college football. You and I love more than college football. Kansas State
Mm-hmm.
winning against Oklahoma. Sorry, Oklahoma fans. Just had to say that. I'm very excited this weekend. Packers are on tonight playing the local Kansas City Chiefs.
Uh-huh.
Patrick Mahomes not in. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's talk about video games.
All right, great. So, Colin, I know you've been wondering this for quite some time, but I can confirm here and now that the next PlayStation console is indeed called the PlayStation 5.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And it'll be out late or it'll be out holiday 2020.
So,
I know both of these come as shocking news to you, but
one thing that's like really, I don't, annoying's not the right word, but I feel like every console generation, there's people saying like, oh, they should just call it the PlayStation, or like the next Xbox should just be called the Xbox. And it's like, no, stop that. That's how Wii U's happen. I don't know about you,
right.
but
Right. So let's run through just some bullet points. So basically earlier this month, Sony did the same thing they did earlier this year, where they went to Wired and were like, here's some details, have at it. Or they met in person. Some people from Wired got to hold the controller and look at some other things. I think they played some like tech demos, basically. So some stuff we already knew, but some other like interesting little tidbits came out. Obviously, the name officially being PlayStation 5. I think that's smart. It's kind of the same thing that we went through last generation, right? Where you were alluding to is like, or is it going to be the Orbis? What are they going to call it? And then it was just the PlayStation 4 because, of course,
the Forbis.
The Forbis.
I don't know.
And so they're like, yeah, it's PS5. Like, yeah, that's it. I was like, okay, cool. So it is going to have a solid state drive, as we kind of knew about before. Games are going to be released on a 100 gigabyte disc.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I think currently it's 50 gigs. The PlayStation 5 will read 4K Blu-rays, which is very exciting for me.
Yeah.
The PS4 Pro currently does not.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is weird. The Xbox One X is my current 4K Blu-ray player, but it's good to know that like this will support it as well.
Yeah.
So kind of helps. Once new consoles are coming around, it will help decide like how things are set up for me, as far as what my if there will be a new 4K Blu-ray player or not. Let's see. So you'll have to install games, as we have been for this entire generation. Yeah. One of the new tidbits we learned is that you'll be able to have more control over what you're installing. So campaign, multiplayer, things like that. You can kind of do that currently if you buy digitally. I know some games support like downloading the multiplayer first.
Right.
I think you're still downloading the whole thing eventually. But you do kind of have that control. So this sounds like it's more just, hey, you actually just straight up don't have to install the multiplayer if you don't want to, or vice versa. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. There's a revised UI, so this will show more detail for any given game. So currently you can kind of like, as you're going across the I don't think, do they call it a cross media bar still?
Yeah, I don't think they
still.
I don't think they do, and that's interesting. They use the word revised because that
I thought so too.
Makes it sound like it's because usually if they wanted something new, they'd be like, oh, it's a brand new display. So like I think it's going to be kind of maybe those two layers like you get with like the settings kind of on top and the games on the bottom. I think that's going to be probably pretty similar.
Oh yeah, I got nothing against just iterating.
Yeah, I was never like an XMB hater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you stood on the PS3's XMB. Yeah, I was fine with it too. I know there's some people who absolutely hated it, but yeah, I mean, I haven't had too many issues with either the PS4 or PS3 interface or anything.
Yeah. So right now, you can hover over game and press down, and it will show you some like trophy details and maybe some friends that are playing the game. It sounds like this will just show more information.
Okay.
Like more specific details to like things that your friends are doing or what you can do, or maybe available multiplayer matches, I think was one of the examples they gave.
Mm-hmm.
So they talked about, so they get to, I mentioned they get to hold the PS5 controller, which doesn't currently have a name, apparently. Sounds like it's pretty similar. Some of the new details was adaptive triggers, which is like a big thing that they went on and on about. So basically, a game could control the level of resistance that the trigger gives. So if you're, let's say playing Horizon 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're drawing back on the bow, like you'll have a proper resistance to make it feel, I guess, more realistic. That's kind of neat. But I don't know about you, but I immediately thought of like, yeah, Horizon 2 is going to be like the game that they talk about this with, right?
Yeah, and it seems like more in depth of like the Xbox One controller has like the rumble triggers, though I don't think really any really games use that anymore. I don't know if like Gears did or whatnot. One thing I think is interesting when they talk about the controller, because I'm pretty sure they talk about the haptic rumble. Yeah. They talk about the speaker, I believe, and they might be like a microphone on it. They don't say anything about the touchpad, if that's even back.
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. Like, the touchpad's a weird thing where some games used it, I think, earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
But then also some games just use it as, like, you touch the touchpad and you pull up the map, right?
Yeah.
Like, it kind of just became this other button.
Yeah.
Which I kind of liked, but...
Yeah,
I don't know. I would like to see it still around, I guess. Like, I don't really have anything against it.
I was watching the Tim Rogers Kotaku video that he put out just the other day. It's like 50 minutes long. Basically saying that like the touchpad is just the biggest select button in gaming history. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
it did kind of turn into that, right? Because like you would have your options for one thing, and it's like, well, we can't use the share button, so
yeah.
So another thing you were talking about with like the haptic feedback and rumble, I guess they used an example of, so the team that made Astrobot, they were playing some demos that they put together for this, and so one of them, they were like sliding around on ice, and they talked about how they were feeling like that kind of resistance through the rumble, specifically, which sounded kind of neat. A lot of this stuff is hard to really parse without actually like experiencing it yourself.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, get an idea of it.
The new controller will be charged with USB Type-C instead of the micro USB cords that we currently are using. I don't think we talked about this last time. I know you and I talked about this privately, but I believe this was the article where the studio president of Bluepoint Games kind of teased like, oh yeah, we're working on a big PS5 game,
right?
And like, we'll just let you figure it out, like what it is. And it's like, all right. I personally would love Demon's Souls, just putting it out there.
Yeah,
as like a remake, but we'll see.
Yep.
I feel like it's a good chance that whatever they're working on is, if not launch, pretty early.
I was gonna wonder if that was probably maybe a launch game. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess depending on what it is, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's much bigger than what they've done in the past, so
yeah.
I guess we'll see. Anything else? Let me see. I'm kind of like going through a bullet point list right now, just making sure we're getting all the major details. I think that's basically it. It'll be out holiday next year.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else. Nothing. Nothing past that.
Well, we did. I didn't have it in the notes, but we did get like that confirmed photo of the PS5 dev kit. I guess
That's right.
We got that monstrous V looking thing with the fans in the middle that was like, it's clearly a mock-up somebody made. Like, apparently that's real.
I thought for sure a few months ago when I saw that, I'm like, that is obviously fake.
Right. Like that's like somebody.
Apparently not.
Somebody. That's the kind of thing you see, like they put like on a YouTube thumbnail to get here's the PS5 revealed, and it's like, no.
Well, and it's like the video that's like 3 years before we ever hear anything about it.
Right.
You know, it's like the secret leaked details of the PlayStation 6. Right, and it's like, what?
Still not as crazy as the Switch leaks of that one thing that was like, but the sun coming through the window with this tree and this and time of the day.
On Google Images, I found the office and the tree is there.
Yep. Nothing that crazy yet.
Insane. I'm sure we'll get there. We got a year, probably about a year and a month to go.
Yeah.
Maybe a year and a half a month even.
Yep.
So that's exciting. So that's it, kind of the. I guess talk about it has maybe died down a little bit. It was earlier this month, but the past week and a half or so has been dominated, Collin, by news of just delays.
'Tis the season.
'Tis the season for delays, as it turns out. So let's start, I guess, in chronological order. So a couple weeks ago, we learned that Doom Eternal was being pushed back from its late November release to March 20th of 2020.
Yeah. I think that's good, at least, for the video game release schedule. I like, because like I was thinking like, man, I'm gonna be playing Death Stranding so close to Doom Eternal.
Yep.
And
for me, it was I'm gonna be playing Pokemon like a week before Doom comes out. I want more time. Like,
right. Yeah, and then I think they also threw in. Now they're saying that like, if you pre-order Doom Eternal, you can get Doom 64 for free, like when that comes out. So I guess that's like a little bonus thing, I guess, but.
It's good. I mean, if you're not going to hit Halloween with a game like that, just take your time.
Yeah, I think about sometimes with delays that I'm like, I do think like, that's good, or hopefully worry like, no, nothing with the project's going bad, but I just feel really happy for like the people working at a studio when a game is delayed. Yeah. Like, thank you. Yeah. Like it's like I can go home tonight and be okay, rather than like, okay, we got some time, rather than like losing our minds up until launch. Yeah,
for sure. Ideally, that's the scenario. Which, speaking of which, we kind of we had a developer like almost explicitly say that was one of the reasons for their delay, which was The Last of Us 2. Has been pushed back from late February, about 3 months. Yeah, almost about 3 whole months.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit over, to May 29th, 2020. So a couple of things for me for this. When I first read the headline, it was just like pushed to spring. And I was like, you should have a day.
Right.
Considering that you had this whole event and you announced the release date, and then it's a month later and now it's being delayed. So it's good they have a day. This seems pretty par for the course almost with Naughty Dog. With their last few releases, we've seen like release date and then delay pretty close to the release.
Yeah.
This is a little farther out. But in the article they posted, I know one of the things that they mentioned was they wanted to have a bit more time and not have to be so stressed, and like give people a little more relaxation and not have to be like just crunching until February.
Yeah, one of the things, I think the biggest part of like Neil Druckmann's article on the PlayStation blog is in the last few weeks, as we were closing out sections of the games, we realized we simply didn't have enough time to bring the entire game up to a level of polish you would call a Naughty Dog quality game.
Yeah.
And so, like, it also reminded me that of the Last of Us, the first game, had a delay, I believe, in 2013. And they talk about how those few extra months just changed a, pretty mediocre, pretty good game to the kind of special thing that it was.
Yeah. And so with The Last of Us, I think this is the kind of delay that to me it's like, okay, fine. I'm actually like happy about it because that clears up some space.
I know, same. Yep.
February-March timeframe.
Yep.
And we're about to talk about, there's quite a bit more space that's been cleared up.
Yep.
Which I'm totally fine with. This is totally one that's like, yeah, you guys are fine. Take whatever time you need. Doom Eternal, I kind of feel the same way, right? With as good as Doom was. I'm more than happy to just be like, yeah, you take your time. We're good. Like,
Yeah.
Death Stranding is out in a week and a half. Like, we're okay.
Yeah.
So let's get to the more interesting delay announcement from this past week. And so Ubisoft had their like quarterly like investor call, right? And they talked about some of the recent releases not doing very hot, or just being failures, right? And then part of that was then announcing that Watch Dogs Legion, which was scheduled for, I think, what was it, early or mid-March?
I think it might have been March, yeah.
It was sometime in March. I don't remember if it was earlier. I think it might have just been in the middle of March. Rainbow Six Quarantine, which, did that have a... I don't...
So, yeah, Watch Dogs Legion was the only one that actually had a date, I believe.
Okay. So, but now Gods and Monsters was, like, explicitly February.
That's true. That's true, yeah.
So all three of them are delayed till like the second half of 2020.
Okay, because I couldn't remember if it was that or if it was just their fiscal year or something past.
Oh, you know what? No, you're right.
I think it might
so
be.
It was delayed to the next fiscal year, which is like April 1st.
Yep, April
to March 31st of 2021.
Yeah.
To me, there's a little surprise and a little like just I'm not shocked at all in this announcement, right? Mm-hmm. Where like I think a Watch Dogs Legion like. A little surprising. I think overall good, but it's like okay, like I guess I'm a little surprised by that. Like they had a date, but also considering how ambitious that game is, like okay. But the Gods and Monsters one, like that's to me, I could totally see that being an early 2021 game.
Yeah,
like
sure.
They announced that game, right? And they talked about, oh, it's the Assassin's Creed Odyssey team on it. It's going to be as big as that game is. We've been working on it for under a year. Also, it's out February of 2020.
Yeah.
And we never saw gameplay. We never saw anything. And to me, that was just like,
Yeah.
Do you mean 2021? Like, is that what you're talking about? So that's not a shocker to me.
Yeah, we still have that just 1 minute trailer, I think, that I still don't really know what this game is, kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, really, I'd give Ubisoft credit. I mean, I guess usually the reaction in those meetings is probably, oh, well, these games did, like Ghost Recon Breakpoint didn't perform well. Well, we got to get these other games out the door as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So they're like, no, we're going to actually double down on these games.
Reminiscent of like Assassin's Creed Unity coming out and being broken, and they kind of were quick to be like, all right, like we got to do something about this.
Yeah.
So I think these are, all of these delays, I think overall probably pretty good. I'm excited for Gods and Monsters, like just the like setup or like the premise of kind of Greek mythology, in a huge open world, the way that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is. And also like the style, like the art style itself, I like quite a bit. But yeah, like that's a game that we saw nothing of, and they haven't shown anything of it. So it was like, okay, is this really coming out in a couple months?
Right.
Clearly not. The one thing that I think is interesting with these three games, potentially, I think Gods and Monsters probably more so than the other three, do you think any of these three games could potentially be a cross-generation game at this point?
I think the one barring an extended Gods and Monsters delay is Rainbow Six Quarantine, because that's going to be multiplayer focused, I would say. They've always kind of said where Siege is more of the PvP, Quarantine's more of the PvE kind of aspect of it. So I would expect that game to be more cross-gen than probably Watch Dogs Legion. And I was even thinking, like, I mean, granted, that game was going to be, what we were saying, March or whatever, but just still, like, we're going to maybe be getting an Assassin's Creed late next year, too.
Right.
So you're going to maybe have, like, 5-6 months difference between...
Well, I mean, I think it makes you wonder, right? Like, how long are these delays? Like, if Legion's a month or two, then it's like, okay, nothing changes for that. But if Watch Dogs Legion is maybe a 5 or 6 month delay...
Yeah.
Then do we even see Assassin's Creed at all next year?
And I would think, though, if it was only a month, they would have at least set a date.
You would think so. Yeah. And that's, Gods and Monsters for me just feels like if it's far enough out that that it could even potentially not release until early 2021, like, to me, it just makes a little bit more sense that would be a cross-gen game.
Right.
But I guess we'll see. Yeah, it's interesting couple weeks here. But it definitely clears up some space in the first 3 months of next year, which is nice.
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate that. And yeah, Doom Eternal kind of moving into I think it's now the same day as Animal Crossing.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Which is mildly hilarious.
Oh,
but,
speaking of which, that is an important point. I forgot about the Switch version is not going to be day and date now for Doom Eternal. So, and people are always joking like, "Oh, it's just to get away from Animal Crossing." It's like, I don't know about that, but yeah, that was kind of interesting. I forgot to put that in there. That the Switch version is going to be some other time.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Well, that's basically that's the news.
That's the delay cast.
That's the delay cast. So let's talk about some stuff we've been playing. So Collin, I just actually want to start off here. About a week, I guess this past week, I finished Borderlands 3. I don't have much else to really say about it. I really enjoyed it. It's a longin. The game took quite a bit of time, but I finally got through it. I think there's a pretty good big thing happens. It fades to black and it goes to be continued and then it just shows the letter 4 in Borderlands font.
Oh, really?
The letter 4, the number 4 in Borderlands font. And if I didn't already know that there was a few missions left after this, I might have been like, what? But also, if that was the case, there probably would have been an uproar about it.
Yeah.
But it was pretty good.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I enjoyed the variety of planets you got to go to in the game. There's a pretty good, just variation in types of locations you're going to, which I liked. I think the final world was pretty interesting. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. There's some good interesting character stuff going on between the villains and some other characters later in the game. It's all right, cool. So I enjoyed my time with that.
Cool.
And as I finished that, I was okay, I know immediately. I know for a fact the next thing I wanted to pick up, and it was one that I've been putting off, and I know it's something I could finish really quick, and that is the Dark Pictures Man of Medan.
I was usually going Medan, but
Medan.
It's
I think
fine.
Medan sounds better.
Yeah.
Couple interesting things of note. So this seems to be, or it doesn't even seem to be, apparently is, based on a true story, or air quotes true story. It's based on a mystery where a crew of a ship just goes missing, or just mysteriously they all die. And I have the Wikipedia article open, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm curious to see how much they took from that, or how many liberties they took and stuff.
Yeah, and how far away? I guess how far away? How long ago was this ship? Was it recent, 1900s or earlier than that?
Yeah, I've got to read through it.
Okay.
I just have it open, so I haven't read anything about it yet.
Okay.
But it was interesting. I was oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize this was based on a thing. So, Dark Pictures, Man of Medan. This is from Supermassive Games, so they were the people that developed Until Dawn. And this is essentially a spiritual successor to that.
Yeah.
No relation so far. But the setup for this, and the way that the way they kind of bundle it is very similar to the thing that they did Until Dawn, where you would play through the story and it would cut out to a scene where you're in a therapist office, right? Do you remember that? And he would ask you questions, and so in this, so do you remember the opening song to Until Dawn, the Ode Death or whatever it's called?
Maybe.
Does this ring a bell at all?
Not really. I guess
you played through a prologue in Until Dawn, and then it cut to a kind of TV show opening.
Okay.
Kind of thing, and it played this song. So this has that too. The song is performed by a different artist for this game. So I'm curious if they might have a different artist perform the song for each entry into this anthology series. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But it has a similar kind of setup where you are being told this story or following the story along through this like guy. I think I want to say they refer to him as like the collector, or they have some kind of like name for him. And he's just the guy who's like sitting in this office with books all around, and he's kind of speaking very cryptically. Feels kind of creep show-ish a little bit, and that kind of like setup for anthology stories. And so you cut back to him a few times. There's not a lot of like he'll ask you questions that might impact things later on in the game. It's mostly you cut back and he'll make some comments. Sometimes I think he kind of cuts back between like certain acts of the game. And so the first one, he made a comment of like, you're doing pretty well so far, right? And then the second one, he was like, looks like you've already lost a casualty, or something like that. So he'll comment on things that have happened or might be happening soon. I'm assuming that he has different phrases that he'll say, whether it's good, kind of neutral, or bad, depending on how you're doing. So you can kind of tell like the path that you're treading thus far. So the story for this game, or for this like part of the anthology, you're following a group of like probably college age, maybe just out of college, kids who you get the sense that a few of them are very interested in this like shipwreck. They've been doing a lot of research. They kind of know where it's located. So one of them comes from a fairly wealthy family, so they've paid money to this person to take her ship out, do some scuba diving, and kind of just like see what they find, right? So your characters all fit into a very specific kind of archetype, right? You got the guy and his girlfriend. You have the brother of the girlfriend. You have the little brother of the older guy, who's a bit nerdy, right? And then you have like the captain of the ship, and she is like pretty by the rules, by the book for the most part. Doesn't really care for these guys, like, or these kids who I don't even know why I say kids. They're all like the same age. She doesn't really care for her passengers digging up like shipwrecks that haven't properly been reported, right? So there's a little bit of tension there if you decide that you want it to be there, or you can kind of act in a more friendly manner, right? Depending on your like choices. But basically, like a little ways in, their ship is hijacked by some pirates. They're taken captive, and these pirates kind of like uncover this plan of theirs to find this Manchurian gold. They believe that there's some kind of treasure on this ship that they're trying to find, and so these pirates see it and they go, "Oh, well, we want that." And so they kind of lead you to this haunted ship, in which crazy things start to happen. I won't say much more than that. The actual prologue of the game, you're following a couple sailors that were on the ship, and so you kind of see the beginning of the bad thing that happens, and then it cuts forward in time to when you're playing as this group of young adults.
Yeah.
So from there, it's basically Until Dawn for the most part, just shorter.
Okay.
It's probably about 3.5 to 4 hours long.
Yeah, I thought it was probably shorter, because I know it's multiple parts and stuff, though. I guess for the whole dark pictures, I guess.
And you're switching between all 5 of the characters at any given point. They can all die. They can all survive. For me, I had one character die before we even got to the boat.
Oh, jeez.
And it was like, and that actually kind of gets into some of my complaints. So the QTEs that this is based around, very similar to Until Dawn. There's a couple of different ones. So if you remember Until Dawn, there was one where you had to hold the controller still. Like, you could not move it, right?
Yeah, those were kind of...
So that's not in this. The kind of replacement, I feel, is one where you're trying to hide, right, and someone's looking for you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're trying to be stealthy. And so it will play like a heart rate monitor across the screen. And it's like a rhythm game, essentially. You're just hitting the X button or the cross button. in conjunction with the like spikes in the heart rate monitor.
Yeah.
And the first couple of times, like, I nailed it, like, no problem. It wasn't a thing. I was like, all right, this is pretty simple. But then there were times later in the game where, like, I was hitting it on track and it just was failing me. And thankfully, they were in situations where it wasn't, like, a do or die thing. I ended up having 4 or 5 characters survive by the end.
Okay.
But it was that, and then there were some other like prompts where like it would show the button and it would give you like a timer that went around the button itself, right? And usually you'd have like a second to press it. There were times with that too where I felt like I pressed it well before the meter ran out, but I was still failing. So that was kind of weird and definitely kind of brought down the experience a bit.
Sure.
I just got lucky that any of these instances where I failed, it wasn't immediately costing me the character. It just, made it a little bit rougher for them.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like a frame rate drop right before the button press or something.
It didn't seem like that. It just like I just felt like they were broken almost. And it wasn't all the time. It was just on a few occasions, but it made it unreliable enough where it was like, man, this kind of sucks. Or this is a bummer.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I did really enjoy it. I will say if the ending felt pretty abrupt, and it felt, if you remember, you finished Until Dawn, right?
I think
you platinumed it, right?
Yeah,
that's right. So if you remember the end of that, they kind of like the surviving teens, I think, get taken in and they're like being interviewed by the police.
Yeah, like the credits, I think, is that.
Yeah. So this basically does the exact same thing. Oh, or well, it can. I think there's a scenario where you could actually just straight up escape.
Okay.
But the one that I got, like, I was just interviewed by the police, and it felt a little bit too same, or too samey, right?
I could see that.
Also, the actual like resolution, we figured it out, we know what's going on. I think felt a little bit to be desired. Like, it left a bit to be desired on that front. I didn't really care for it. It was like, okay, this makes sense, but like, it's kind of a bummer that it's just that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. I will say, like, the prologue, especially the 2 like sailors that you're following along with, does not make a great first impression. I feel like the acting for those characters specifically is like really rough. And some of the animation on them like was kind of rough as well. They just looked bad. Which kind of goes, like, it kind of, like, tracks into the main characters as well. Like, the walking animation's a bit stiff. I don't remember if that was a thing in Until Dawn as well. I feel like it was.
Yeah, I remember that a little bit.
Also, one thing I really liked is, so it's a lot of it's fixed camera angles, and there's definitely quite a few parts in this that felt very Resident Evil. And just your perspective as you're walking along, which I obviously I like that. And then, so the other thing, really quick, there's not really much to say about this. So, you beat it, credits roll, and then it starts rolling a trailer, or a teaser for the next game in the Dark Pictures anthology.
Right.
This one is called Little Hope. If I were to take a just stab in the dark, it seems like it's going to be focused around witches.
Okay.
Or a witch.
Heck yeah.
It seems like so that's exciting.
Yeah.
So basically the teaser shows 2 characters. They seem to be running from something. Something seems to be following them. It switches to, there's like a bonfire. There's like a little girl kind of dancing around, singing around this bonfire. And she's holding a doll that feels very, if not voodoo-ish, but like something like you would see out of like Blair Witch almost. So that's kind of where my mind's at on the witch front.
Okay.
It's based in a town called Little Hope.
Oh, okay.
Maybe feels a bit on the nose, but
right.
it totally like fits the small town vibe. That is sometime next year. I don't remember where I read this, and I couldn't find the article, but I feel like I read a long time ago that the intention, like, because you remember, this was, like, Dark Pictures was announced. Man of Medan was announced, like, a couple years ago. And we didn't really see much of it, and then when we saw it again, it had a release date, and it was coming out soon.
Yeah.
And I think I remember reading that the intention was to announce it and then once they start releasing it, they would be pretty frequent.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case. I'm hoping it is, just due to the nature of this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping Little Hope is something that's maybe first half of next year rather than like a whole year from now.
Sure.
But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I guess so. Did this do well sales wise?
I don't know.
Because I don't know if it, because this is a Bandai Namco published, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've seen like YouTube ads and some of their like kind of stuff put up for it, but I don't know. I guess I just wondered.
I mean, Until Dawn, when it came out, I think it surprised a lot of people, and it became like a big like streaming and YouTube thing for like a hot minute.
Yeah,
and so I definitely don't think it got that kind of notoriety. But I feel like I remember seeing that when it came out that it like sold respectively.
Yeah,
like, it was a pretty respectable performance. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. There's they're making Little Hope, so
yeah,
we'll see how that does. That's the thing though. Is like hopefully these do well enough that they don't just stop making them at some point, right? Like,
sure.
And I don't know that they've said how many they're planning either. It's a lot of questions, a lot of things I'm curious about with this. But
sure.
Regardless, I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Is it?
It's got some issues, but
is it as messed up as Until Dawn gets towards the end? Because like Until Dawn got really messed up.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? Is like I had my one character, and the way my one character died was so, like, it's not the right word, but like anticlimactic is the only thing I can even explain. Like, the way he died. Oh no, spoilers or not even spoiler. Like the way this character died, it was like I don't. Is he dead? Did he really? Is that really it? Like, they're not just gonna come back later on,
right?
Because basically the setup for it, without too many details, is when you're still on the first boat and the pirates have you captive, you can have a character go out to one of the boats that they rode in on, and like just if they can get to the boat and sneak off that way, they could get help and then come back. That was like basically the plan. And so I get to the boat, like I have my character get to the boat, and there's a couple button prompts, right? And they notice that he's like sailing away, and there was one last button prompt where they go to shoot him, and it was one of the buttons where like I definitely hit it, and it just failed me for whatever. Like I definitely hit it with time left, but it went to fail. So he gets hit by this bullet, and it definitely feels like from that distance, given what's going on, it felt very like that's I don't know. I don't know if I buy that.
Right.
So it felt a little cheap, but the thing is, because I was able to kind of like easily make it through with all my other characters, I didn't see any other like death scenes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know how like crazy it got. I will say there's some cool stuff like later on in the game where it's like, oh, that was really neat, or I liked how they did this. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Cool. Well.
Oh, one other thing. So, one last thing. Sorry.
Yeah,
so
okay.
You can, as you're exploring the ship and the different environments you're in, you'll find like picture frames hanging on the walls, and if you inspect them, it will give you a premonition, and oftentimes the premonition will kind of like show you a bad thing happening to a character.
Oh yeah, that was kind of an Until Dawn, wasn't it too, a little bit?
I vaguely remember that.
I thought it had like stuff with the butterflies and
something like that, right? So they used to kind of like give you just enough information that when I would find something and then a choice would come up and I would go, oh, I should definitely say this to prevent this thing from happening. So that's kind of neat. One of the premonitions you can find is actually a scene from Little Hope. Oh, look at that! So that's kind of cool, right? Like, that's a neat little tease, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's Man of Medan.
All right, well, cool. Then hopefully Little Hope is not going to give us little hope for the franchise. That's a stretch. Okay. Well, there's something else that's Little Hope. The Last of Us Remastered I've been replaying. This is the first time I've been playing this game since I platinumed it all the way back on PS3 when it came out. And I feel like, Curtis, I need to apologize to you personally. I feel like I need to apologize to our audience. I remember The Last of Us being great. I forgot how just incredible that game is. Like, I remember it being fantastic, but I think I just forgot how fantastic this game really is.
Yeah.
So The Last of Us Remastered is free on PlayStation Plus, and when the PS4 version came out, never did play it. Visuals looks a lot better even with that, and 60 frames per second, stuff like that. Yeah, played through it twice. Just played it on easy. Went through, got all the collectibles. I thought like playing God of War last year, because like God of War, the remake's just kind of, or not remake, but reboot is kind of like The Last of Us, but God of War. And I was just thinking, it's like, man, I remember The Last of Us being good, but man, I remember God of War, like, oh, that's probably better than The Last of Us. Like, I don't know about, it's. I was thinking about it. It's the thing that happens when I play like Metal Gear Solid like 2, 3, and 4. It's like you play Metal Gear Solid 2 and you're like, man, Metal Gear Solid 2 is like the best Metal Gear Solid. And then you go to replay 4 and you're like, nah, man, Metal Gear Solid 4 is the best Metal Gear. And it's just like whatever one I played recently is like, no, that's the best one. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm having right now. And then I'm just like, yeah, The Last of Us is pretty incredible. Just through everything, just like dialogue, how just its undertones lead back to different things that you did like hours ago. That's why I feel like video games are so unique, and maybe novels can be like this a little bit too, but I feel like you can't tell a story like The Last of Us in a 2.5 hour movie.
Right.
That connection that I have with Joel and Ellie at the beginning of the game cannot, I wouldn't have that same thought if it was 2.5 hours later. Like, it's just going through all those different things, and this whole like, I want to say it took me like 15, 20 hours to beat it the first time. I played it way back when. Because it's a long game. Like, it's nothing short. I do remember how Pittsburgh felt, because it's like right after Billstown. I kind of forgot how much that dragged a little bit. And yeah, I mean, I remember just replaying it, like, man, Pittsburgh just never seemed to end. And that's probably like the low point for me. I think there's some parts they definitely could have cut out, but it really just, in a way, it's almost needed. Like, in a way, that kind of like, that kind of repetition just is kind of needed, just to show like how many people Joel is rolling through, and just the stuff they're going through and the stuff they're seeing. And really, just from the beginning of Pittsburgh to the end of Pittsburgh, like, you really do kind of see these characters completely different. You do have Sam and Henry. You kind of, have their story in Pittsburgh as well. That is really just tragic. Like, I remember, like, oh yeah, I remember that happened and that kind of stuff, but I just forgot how well those scenes are just expertly done. And it's almost like lost for words kind of thing. Like, it's so incredible that I can't believe, I guess I just forgot how much it is. The opening doesn't really get to me all that much, and I remember playing through it again and being like, yeah, that's still pretty somber and sad. But just how, not to get into spoilers, but just how the ending of that game, how you can just look back at every other aspect of that game and just be like, well, that like, can't believe how this person would have felt about that, and like this person who they lost, and really what this game is about. This game's kind of revolving around Ellie, but really in the end it's about this one person's decision to do something, and how maybe that overshadows everything,
and how that impacts the people around him.
And I think that's what makes all the hype for the second game, is how that's going to affect the next game. One thing I did that was kind of, I don't know, I call it unique or whatever, but I kind of thought I did a little bit different. I played through the first time. I got to the part where, I guess, like, minor spoiler, I guess, Joel gets injured, and then I immediately played Left Behind. So I got up to that point where Joel's injured, where then Left Behind begins, and then I played through Left Behind, and then I went back and then started up The Last of Us main story again. So
That's
it
cool.
was actually kind of cool that I did it that way. I was looking to see like if there was what was like Beyond Two Souls did that, where like you can, when the PS4 version came out, you could play through the game chronologically and not like going all up and down her life or whatever. So I was like, oh, maybe there's like a way. I was like looking in the settings, like, is there a way to like automatically play Left Behind when this happens? but I didn't see that. But yeah, it was cool. I played through a little bit of multiplayer again. Not very much. I forgot how kind of frustrating it is. I don't know if you ever played any of the multiplayer like factions.
Never touched it.
Yeah,
Nope.
so it's neat in a way that, other than this like regular deathmatch stuff, you have a faction. So you're either like the Fireflies or the Smugglers or something like that. I can't remember what they call you. But like every once in a while you get like these missions you have to do because you're like taking care of your own group and your own people, and then messages will come up, be like, oh, like Timothy's tending to the crops, and if you don't get a certain amount of headshots or a certain amount of marks or a certain amount of downs or executions in a game, like Timothy is going to start getting sick, and if you keep continually doing poorly, Timothy is going to die. It's kind of stuff like that that's unique. But there's a couple trophies that are tied to completely beating both of the faction things, and the more you do, they're like, oh well, I want to only do this many marks, and you could get into a game where okay, well, I need like 5 marks to so Timothy doesn't get sick, and then somebody else on the other team everybody could have the perk of like, well, you can't be marked. And so you're basically just like screwed, and it's like, well, yes, Timothy's just gonna die because I can't mark these people because I got randomly matched into this match where I have to mark people that I can't. But it's neat in that way. Probably if it wasn't for those multiplayer trophies, I would maybe consider going back for the platinum. But you got to put in a lot of time for that. And I beat the game on Survivor and Survivor Plus back on the PS3. I can't imagine doing that again. But yeah. Just excited for the second one. I would love The Last of Us Part 2 to pick up right after the first one left off. I think that would be incredible. Right. In that same moment, both of them standing there, I think would be fantastic.
I thought about it, but I don't want that to happen because I worry about it cheapening.
I agree. Yeah.
The ending, I feel like it would just I think it would take a lot away from it. So I would rather it be something that's however, like years later or like months later,
right,
or something like that first scene, right? Like I think we already know that the game takes place however many years later.
I think it's 5, I think.
But I don't want there to be a part of this game that like immediately picks up after the end of first one, just because it's like it's a great place to hang your hat on. Don't try and like continue writing that scene.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. But yeah, that's The Last of Us Remastered. I've been definitely wanting to play it. It's just I think it's been like $5 before on like a PlayStation Plus sale sometimes. But I have like this list of games like on my phone that's like, I don't know, these are like pretty prime PlayStation Plus games maybe at some point. Yeah. So I'm like holding out. So I've been holding out since like 2014.
Yeah.
But yeah,
finally happened.
It's free, and it's like, oh, I'll play it. I'm still waiting on like the Order 1886 to be free, but you know what?
Oh, one day. One day. I like that. I like that game.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it. Yeah.
I'm bummed about. Well, anyways, so speaking of free games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This weekend I started playing The Outer Worlds. So I finished up Borderlands. I was like, all right, let's move on. Let's pick up the next big open world RPG shooter thing. So this is on Game Pass, which is ridiculous for one.
Yeah, and I love that Xbox is even though it's not a Xbox Microsoft published game, like they're literally treating like it is one.
I mean, rightfully so in some respects, right?
Oh yeah,
like I think it works out better for them. But so some cool anecdotes to make about this game, right? So this is from Obsidian. So this is not, Microsoft acquired Obsidian. This is not like the first Microsoft published game from them though, so this is like the last one before Obsidian is like, all right, let's make stuff for Microsoft now. It is also it is very clearly the kind of spiritual successor to their Fallout New Vegas.
Yep.
Right. We got some similar writers on the team. There's a lot of like overlap here, and it's a very clear like homage to what they were doing there, which is exciting, right? It's a RPG in the style of Fallout that is not from Bethesda, so it's a new world, but it's still very much like you can tell pretty early on it's got that sense of humor and that kind of style, and it's a very similar kind of game, right? One thing I will say, so I've gotten off the first planet, and I'm kind of like in the middle of going to the next destination. I think my current side quests, I've actually gone back to the first planet, just in a different location to do something. But I'm probably 7 hours in so far. This is a game not unlike Fallout that if you mainlined it, I've heard that you can finish in under 15 to 20 hours. But if you kind of take your time and do side quests and stuff, you can be upwards of 50 to 60. So I'm sure I'll fall somewhere in the middle there. One thing I will say right off the bat is coming at this game right after playing Borderlands 3 is a little rough because just getting used to a different style of control, we'll say, like the way guns handle and the way that feels to shoot at enemies is significantly less than I would say Borderlands is, right?
Yeah.
I think Borderlands 3, generally speaking, at least the class of guns that I was using in that game, like felt really good. It felt more like a shooter, right? Whereas this very much feels like RPG first, shooter last.
Yeah.
Some of it's not. Some guns are a little better than others for sure, but I'm definitely feeling it. This game does have a VAT style system where you can slow down time. You're not like, it's not quite. Whereas VATS, you would slow down time and pick specific body parts,
right,
and kind of load up some shots and then let it go. This is more like time is slowing, but you're still aiming and firing at enemies. But they have like an in-lore reason for that, right? Like they're like, hey, you've been frozen in time for a long time. That's going to mess with your perception of time.
What do they call it? Like obviously it's probably not VATS.
Oh, I don't remember. It's like kind of similar, but I'm blanking on it right now. But yeah, so I mean, the character I created is someone that has very high like persuasion skills, so I can very easily lie or persuade people to kind of get out or around of different situations. I'm also spec'd very high in like engineering and stuff, so I can some of my crafting abilities are a bit better than what they normally would be. So I'm trying my best to kind of like build up a character that can like just talk myself around firefights, or if I could potentially just avoid fighting altogether. I'm trying to do that. It's led to some interesting scenarios. And it's nice too because whenever you're using that stuff, like you're just getting experience just for using those traits.
Okay.
Which is convenient.
Yeah, it's not like you have to kill enemies for XP or whatever.
And I've gotten into situations where like I talk to someone and my conversation goes for a while, and as it's going, I'm like getting experience through the conversation based on choices I'm making. And so the conversation will end and it will be like, you leveled up. It's like, great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Similar again to Fallout, as you're leveling up, you're gaining points to use to buy perks. And those perks are like, permanent, like boost to stats or other abilities you have. You can get companions that will come along with you. Your companions have their own series of side quests that you're doing. Right now I have 3 companions. You can bring with you 2 at a time. The first one I got, Parvati, I think is her name. Fairly certain she's voiced by Ashley Birch.
Okay.
Like almost 100% sure because she's just kind of doing her voice for this character.
Yeah.
Actually, like there's been a couple of times where I'm like, if I was not looking at the TV, I would probably think this was Chloe talking.
Sure.
From Life is Strange.
Is there are there any Hellas she says?
Not yet.
Okay, well we're getting
nothing
there.
Yet.
Hopefully.
But yeah, and this is also a game. So again, I'm fairly early on, right? I'm not even to a point where I feel like the main story has really come into view yet. The opening, you make your character, you're unfrozen, you are launched into space and crash into this world. You do a couple little missions there, and then you fly out into space. So I have my ship now. I can fly around to different planets. But I feel like I'm like just getting to the point where the main story is coming into view. But I don't really like know what that is yet, right? So I don't have much to say on that. I will say one of the last things I'll say is like this game has moments where it looks really nice, and then it has moments where it looks not. It's just the opposite of that. It can look really good in parts, and it can look really bad in some parts as well.
Just like bad textures and stuff.
Just
like
like
that.
yeah. But I will say to its credit, like I think one thing that helps it a lot over something like a Fallout is that it has a lot of colors it's using. It's not super drab. It's generally speaking a very colorful game, which I think helps a lot, right? Like I think it just makes the world look a little bit more lively than it just being like grays and browns and stuff like that. So
sure.
I'm enjoying it so far. I want to try and get through it pretty quick because I want to be ready for Death Stranding when that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not far away. It's a little under 2 weeks.
Oh,
so I got, and I got Luigi's Mansion 3 somewhere in the middle there. So I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I can, but we'll see.
Oh, man. I just remembered Luigi's Mansion was a thing. I was like, oh, right. That's also coming.
Yeah. And two things I'll go through just really quick to wrap up my stuff. So a couple weeks ago, Concrete Genie and Indivisible came out. So I picked both of them up. I played for a few hours for each of them the first day they came out. I have not touched them since.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've been wanting to get through Borderlands, so I'm going to probably come back to those soon. Concrete Genie especially, because that, from what I understand, is very short.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start with Concrete Genie. So far, the hour or so I played of it, I love. The actual, like, controlling your character, a little janky. You can definitely feel some budget there. But overall, it's pretty easy to get over. It still continues to like give me heavy Infamous Second Son vibes.
I was gonna say the same because the character looks like
the character
the
looks
painting, and
yeah. But I actually really enjoy the painting. It's freeform enough. Like it's not completely freeform that like it's hard to make something look good, but it gives you enough flexibility, at least very early on, still, that like you feel like you can make something interesting on your own without it being too guided. So I really like that so far. And I'm very early, like very, very early in the game. That like I'm just being set loose. So I feel like there's still a lot, like as far as the painting and stuff is concerned, for me to discover. So very strong, strong first impression from that game. Indivisible is something that's going to be a bit longer. I played it for a few hours. This is a game that was kickstarted. Actually, like there was a early demo that they put out years ago. I
remember that, yeah,
on an Extra Life stream. But I think I've never played these games, but I guess it's similar. The combat is similar to like Valkyrie Profile, where like every character is assigned to a specific button, be it square, triangle, circle, X, and you can like. And this is the team that did Skullgirls, and so there's like almost like fighting game combos you can pull off where each character is like comboing into each other's attacks. It's a really interesting combat system, but I will say one thing or two things really that's kind of taken a little bit of the wind out of my sails on like my hype for this game, which was pretty like I was pretty up like hyped for this. One is it's not really an RPG in the way I was expecting it to be. Your characters do level up, but due to the menus being so just very plain and not much information displayed at all in any menu that you pull up, there doesn't seem to be a clear reason for leveling up. It's unclear what it's actually doing for you, and you're not like getting skill points. You don't have stats, so there's not really like much there to show your progression as you're leveling up, other than I guess maybe getting more health. But it's like it's very unclear like how that's really helping you, and because of that, it definitely feels like a game where it's like, okay, I'm leveling up, but this doesn't really feel like an RPG, which is kind of disappointing. It's, you know, one of the cool things about this game is there's just so many characters you can use, and so there's so many different party variations you can have. And maybe it's a fault of mine for not following it as closely as maybe other people did, but like I didn't realize until playing it that like it doesn't. I thought this was going to be more of an RPG than it actually is. So that's a little bit disappointing. But that said, like it's a beautiful game. Like the artwork is like really just incredible. It seems to be moved like again the first few hours. it was moving at a pretty quick like pace. I was getting a lot of new characters. I'm assuming they probably wanted to get you to 4 characters pretty quick, just so you can kind of see what the combat system can be.
Sure.
One of the first boss fights I did, I thought was really cool, and I didn't realize this game was going to do it, is like I was in combat, and there's no like transition sequence to combat, right? You just run into an enemy and you start fighting. So I would be in combat with this boss, and then the combat phase would go away, and it would turn into like a platforming segment. The game's a 2D side-scrolling platformer as well.
Right.
And so like the boss was like jumping back and forth between combat phases and like platforming. And the way it was done was was just totally seamless. And I thought, at least in that fight, I actually thought it was really cool. I've read about fights later on in the game that are pretty frustrating because there's not like checkpoints between them each phase, but I guess I'll find out when I get there. But that's it. I do like it. I am enjoying it, but I could, depending on how long this game goes,
and the time, yeah, man.
and the lack of this like the RPG nature that I thought was gonna be there, I can definitely see this being something that either just starts to drag or I just kind of like peter out on and maybe don't finish.
Yeah.
Which would be a bit of a bummer, but we'll see. Time will tell on that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got though. That's basically what my October's been.
Yeah. Well, I'm still behind. I've got one October game, which we'll get to, but my September game still really taking my time with. It seems like it's supposed to be a short game. It's supposed to get through pretty quickly, but The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening on their Nintendo Switch. Still, I didn't think I was going to pick it up, but kind of last moment, I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. So I remember playing the original Link's Awakening a good amount, though I don't recall I ever got very far. So this was like on Game Boy. I really remember that screen in the was it Mabel town, wherever the main town you're in that you start off in. There's like that this like the whole screen where you've just got all of the bushes and grass that you can just cut and just get like a whole bunch of rupees, because you could just walk off the screen and then just come back onto the screen. You could just cut all of them again. And like the shovel was like 300 rupees, and I just remember being on vacation and just 1 rupee at a time, like trying to get as many rupees to get the shovel from the guy in the shop. Like that was really my only memories of Link's Awakening. I don't remember getting all that far in it. But yeah, this is kind of one of the, other than this and like maybe like the Oracle games, kind of like the lost kind of Zelda games. So I'm not an art style hater. I am an art style supporter of
Me
this
too.
game. Yeah. As something like weird as, the Wind Waker art style, I still really like this one. So I have not beaten it yet. I do kind of know the ending. I know what it's about. But
I feel like, and I don't remember this so much from when I played the DX version years ago. And I think you're far enough along that you've started to see it. There's like some of the bosses, when you beat them, they will like say something.
Yeah. Yep.
And it very explicitly spells out the ending. And I don't remember that being the case. Maybe it's been long enough that I just don't remember.
Sure.
And maybe it helps that like I know what the ending is, so maybe it's just clear to me but not clear to anyone else.
Yeah.
But it feels pretty like pointed.
Right.
Which was like kind of surprising to me, but again, my memory could be failing me, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of them that I beat just the other day, or it was like something like, "You fool, you have absolutely no idea," and stuff like that. Yeah, like they do kind of have those little messages like that.
We don't need to say it on here, but like that particular boss like totally says something else like after that, where it's like, oh okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure. Yeah, that I mean, when Aerith dies in the end of Link's Awakening, it was really gut wrenching.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll edit that.
It was
out.
surprising to see her show up.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, love the music. I think the music's fantastic. I really like the Game Boy soundtrack, like listening to that back in the day. But it's just kind of like I'll just be driving in the car. It's like, hold on, I'm synced up on Bluetooth on my phone in my car. Like, let me load up that Link's Awakening soundtrack on YouTube real quick. and just like drive to Mabletown or whatever that town is. And but yeah, I just beat the fourth dungeon. I don't remember how many there are. I guess 8? Is there 8 total? Because I mean it's like level 4, and I think I'm on level 5 now.
There's 8, and then the like Windfish segment. There's like it's a pseudo dungeon, but not like a full on dungeon.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's more of like a boss.
Yeah, and
stuff.
I've been doing my best not to use a guide. There's been some times where I'm like, I have to, like, I really just want to get through this. I'm tired of taking forever on this particular moment.
I used it on this just because I've beaten this game before, and I wanted to like get most of the collectibles.
Sure.
And like just go through it quick. The last like one or have you beaten the game before, or did you?
I've never beaten it before. Okay. I do know kind of some of the stuff.
So the last 2 dungeons like get kind of complicated, so I can see that being something that you might want to just like have a guide ready for.
Okay.
Especially, I think I don't remember if it's this. Oh man, I think it's the last one. There's a ton, like the way that you like route through that dungeon. It's just a lot of like looping around, and getting back to the main centralized area and then going a different route.
Yeah.
That can get kind of confusing, pretty confusing for sure.
Yeah, and I guess I guess I'm only halfway through the game. I guess all in all, but I thought I was maybe I'm on level. Maybe I got to 5, whatever the water one is with the fish as the main boss fight. Maybe that's 5. I can't remember. But yeah, I still enjoy it. I think it's one of those things that it's like quality of life improvements of like the Pegasus boots being on there. It's
a game changer.
Yeah, where like you have to keep opening the menu and stuff like that. I was watching Game Explain's video on it. They had one just the other day. I was like under the Super Scope and talking about how like when they played through like the second dungeon, they had to open the menu like 42 times or something like that. And it's like, I don't
see how you could go back. Like I would never. I don't think I'd be able to go back to the DX or the original Game Boy version.
Right. Sure.
After this, like it's the handling of your equipment and like the way some of them are just like it's just this button now, and like not having to go into the inventory all the time, and the fact that it's just a scrolling map and it's not screens, it makes it so much faster to traverse the world. Like those two things combined alone, like completely change. Like it makes it feel like a more of a modern game than it actually is. It's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think and that's really at that point. That's like go remake the original Legend of Zelda now. That kind of stuff. I think probably something.
It's called
like
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, is that? I guess okay. I think probably something like Link to the Past is still. Probably fine to go back to, but like the original Legend of Zelda, the Oracle games, I think those are certainly, you would think, probably maybe next on the docket.
It would be really cool to get the Oracle games remade. I think with like the third, because there was going to be a third.
Right. Yeah, or isn't there something like if you have a saved, or I can't remember what it was.
So yeah, when you beat one, you put a passcode into the other, and it like unlocks other things. So.
Right. Yeah, that's super cool. But yeah, hats off to, I believe this was Grezzo who did this one. It's really great. I'm really having a lot of fun with it. I think about certainly, I've already got I'm only that many dungeons in, and I'm already on like the second line of heart containers, so I feel like I'm doing pretty good, like finding a good amount of secrets and stuff. So yeah, I definitely want to go back. I haven't done anything with the chamber dungeons with Dampe or whoever.
I did a little bit, but I just did a few times. Like they're kind of neat, but I don't know.
You don't really have anybody to share them with, so it's like kind of weird. And then even if you want to share it, it's like you got to get the amiibo and that kind of stuff.
Well, I did get the amiibo.
I did too. I didn't take it out of the box yet, though. I kept it in the box.
I didn't like get into it as much as I thought I would. But I kind of appreciate that it's there. It's neat.
Sure.
But I don't know. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah. But just it's more of a traditional Zelda game, which that's kind of really what I wanted.
Which is nice to have too.
Yeah, and and I think, I think that's really important to have, that there's always kind of this style of game, either it be this or then Link Between Worlds, like that every so many years we're actually going to get like a top-down traditional kind of Zelda game. So yeah, definitely been playing that during college football, but still sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to put the Switch down. I got to actually like watch what's going on in this game right now. So sometimes I lose some time on that, but other than that, man, I don't know if I'm ready to call this my game of the year so far.
Oh,
but yeah, man, Yooka Laylee and the Impossible Lair.
Oh, that's a weird name for Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah,
continue,
Dragon
please.
Quest XI S, Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Don't ask me why I still know that name.
It's a game of the year. Of course you know it.
I guess so. I just feel like I've watched so many Nintendo Directs that I'm like, yep, I know the name of that game because they say it every time. But yeah, Yooka Laylee and the Impossible Lair. And I kind of mentioned to you like probably weeks ago that I think the original Yooka Laylee, being the 3D platform that it is a great game. It's just the frame rate and the camera really kind of ruin it. Yeah. And with this game, you have a 2D side scroller that doesn't have really a camera.
And neither of those.
and then you have a game that is able to run at 60 FPS, even on Switch. And it runs super smoothly. And so,
are you playing on Switch?
I'm playing on the PlayStation 4.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm playing on that. Got to get my trophies, of course. And I played the original Yooka Laylee, and I just would love to have both platinums on that and stuff. But yeah, like I'm playing on base PS4. It runs great. I even like watched like Digital Foundry's video. Even on Switch, there's like barely any frame rate drop, so it's like solid 60. Curtis, this is the Donkey Kong Country game on a different console that I've always wanted.
Yeah.
Everything between rolling forward, you can roll off a ledge and you can jump while in the air and reach new places. Few things get me infuriated as much as platformers, but few things give me the level of satisfaction that platformers do. And if anything, this game just still reminds me how great Donkey Kong Country is and how terrible Super Mario Brother games are. Calling you out like Super Mario Maker 2 and stuff like that. I think those games are like pretty terrible. Just gonna say that. Okay. Donkey Kong Country and like those games and Tropical Freeze and stuff like that. I hesitate to say that I really played Tropical Freeze because I rented it and I just played through the whole thing as Funky Kong. And when I beat the final boss, I was like, oh, that was the final boss. Like I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that.
Tropical Freeze is good.
Yeah, it's
a good one.
It's good for sure. I listen to that soundtrack from here and there too. But yeah, Yooka Laylee and the Impossible Lair. I love jingles, Curtis. If there's one thing I love, it's jingles. And this game has a lot of jingles. Everything you like, there's all these different collectibles. There's the quills. There's these tonics you collect that give you like different abilities. Every time you collect one of those collectibles, you unlock a new area. You beat a stage. You get all the coins in a stage. All of them have their own little different jingles, and I absolutely love them. I think the soundtrack is really good. I think it's one of probably the best in a side scroller that I've heard, and sometimes it could be better than probably maybe some Donkey Kong Country ones. It's this guy named Matt Griffin, and then somebody else, and then they do have David Wise and Grant Kirkhope doing music for it. So it's like 4 different guys, and the one I know specifically being the Matt Griffin, because he's done a couple of them that I've gone and actually had to look up on YouTube, and they are fantastic. And I might have to link you some of them, because they are like it's some of the stuff you just like put on at like 11:30 when you're like trying to fall asleep, and you're just like I want something somber, or you're like, man, I'm kind of in like a down mood, I want something like cheery, and you put on like Windmill Falls or whatever that stage is called, and it's just like so upbeat. It's so good. If it tells you anything, I actually was like pretty depressed after watching Joker. We talked about that a little bit, and like man, I need something to cheer me up, and I actually put on like one of the Yooka Laylee soundtracks, and I was like, I need something like upbeat. I need something cheery. And that's what I did. So it's everything like aesthetic wise is Donkey Kong Country for sure. You don't necessarily have hearts where usually so let's say you're playing like with Diddy in the new games, Donkey and Diddy in the new games. You have like 2 hits for Diddy, 2 hits for Donkey, and then once you lose like your 2 hits with Diddy, then you're only Donkey Kong only. There's no hearts here, but you essentially have 2 hits. So you have Laylee the bat on your back, and if you get hit, then Laylee starts like flying around the stage, like kind of all crazy. Yeah. And you can retrieve her, but she only flies around. It's like a
Yoshi's Island.
It's a Yoshi's Island thing, and this is probably my least favorite part of the game, is trying to grab that dang bat, because like it just does not fly where it kind of supposed to fly in like a general area where where you got hit, but it's that kind of thing. You're like, oh, okay, like, well, all right, well, let me go try and go grab Laylee, and okay, I got to climb down this rope, and then I got to jump over, and then let me climb back up the rope because I can't just jump laterally because there's an enemy there that hit me. And then like once you finally do that, like the bat starts flying off in this completely opposite direction, and more than often I am just ignoring. Like if I get hit, I'm ignoring Laylee. I can get to another part where you get a Laylee, you get like a Laylee bell, and then Laylee comes back. But there's so many times where I'm like, get over here, and it just does not fly anywhere you want it to go. Because then even if you get close to like where you want it to go, it starts flying away from you again, and it's one of the most infuriating parts. But a good amount of checkpoints. There's no like KONG letters in the game, but there's in like kind of in the newer games there were of Donkey Kong Country there'd be puzzle pieces. Yeah. Where this one just has, they call it twit coins, TWIT. Okay. I can't remember what that stands for. But your boy Trouser's back, and these are like trouser coins, basically.
Oh God, right, Trouser.
Yeah, so he.
How could I forget? So
he does these. He has to unlock new areas. You have to collect so many of these coins, and you have to take down his paywalls. So that's what they call it. So when Trouser goes, like you're like, oh, I want to get to the new area, and he's like, yeah, and it's got all that stuff. You got to pay like 25 twit coins that you find in the levels to unlock the new area, and it's like pleasure doing business with you, all that snake stuff.
Yeah, yep, all the snake stuff.
It's great.
Oh. Great, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
So how far are you in? Have you given the Impossible Lair a go?
I have not given the Impossible Lair a go. I think they automatically make you do it when you first start the game, just to show you like, hey, look how underpowered you are.
Could you imagine, like, they're like, all right, we're gonna make you do this thing, and then like you just beat it?
Apparently before the game came out, they said, I mean, I'm sure it's on YouTube, but people have said it's possible. Like it is possible to do it.
We're gonna see it at like Awesome Games Done Quick.
I'm sure. But so I think what ends up happening is every time you beat a level, you get a B, and I think that maybe counts for like one more hit in the Impossible Lair. And of course, what do you call an army of bees, Curtis? A B-talion. There we go.
I'm really ashamed of myself because you texted me that joke, and I should have known it.
Yeah. And
but
then
I couldn't think of it.
And it's this like mother bee, and you got to track down all of the bees from the what?
BBs, the bee bait.
No, nothing like that yet. But well, what are all these bees? Where do they live, Curtis? They live in the stingdom.
In the beach.
It's just got a lot of like little stuff like that I just I'm so thankful. So Capital B, who is the bad guy, he's mind controlling these bees, and what do they call it, Curtis? They call it the hive mind.
That's good.
Yeah, it's just stuff like that. Like it's just like, oh gosh. And like I just walked by, and there was like this crate that had eyes on it, and you've been pushing around all of these crates to put on switches and stuff in the overworld, which I can get to that too. And then he was like, oh well, you just been pushing my friends around and I don't like you or whatever. And Yuka's like, well, better leave, don't want to create any problems. It's like, oh my gosh. But I love it. I love all of it. I love all of that.
It's still like something I feel like I'll probably end up picking.
I love all of it.
Hope maybe it'll go on sale on like a holiday sale or something.
Yeah. I really think the amount of quality between the difference in quality between the original and this one really just feels like two completely different teams made things. Like you could clearly tell the first one felt like a Kickstarter kind of game, but this one just completely does not feel like that. Just a couple other things. I guess last thing, the big thing to touch on is the overworld, which is kind of like a top-down isometric overworld, which has its own little nooks and crannies to get into. It's got like a lot of different characters from like the original Yooka Laylee that'll be like, oh, I remember you, and kind of stuff like that. And it's got like different abilities that you normally find. So you actually find the tonics in the overworld, and the tonics are anything like, oh, you roll faster or you run faster, that you can actually use in the 2D side-scrolling levels. But if it's not those, then you can be like, oh, invert the stage upside down and stuff like that. It's kind of weird. Just some are kind of like tacked on little fun things. Some of them are actually like, hey, this is actually going to help me now.
That's cool though.
Yeah, it's neat. And of course, like, the studio being called Playtonic, and their logo is like a little whatever, like a beaker glass or whatever they call that kind of thing. And like that's actually what the collectibles you're finding in the overworld. Yeah. And of course, every time you collect one, it's got its own little jingle of it. It's fantastic. Feels like super satisfying to get. But in the overworld, you have the different books. So let's say I go to a level that's kind of by like a waterfall, but the waterfall is like being backed up by this gate in the way or something like that, and I have to like go around and try to undo the gate. But to start the stage, I can just go in and play this like factory level, which is next to the waterfall. Like, fine, I can go play that. It's fine, and it's just a normal level. But then you beat that level, and you go back to the overworld, and you kind of explore the overworld a little bit, and you end up able to open that gate, and then all of a sudden that stage you played is now flooded. So now it's like such and such factory flooded. So now you're playing it, and it's all like underwater. There's a lot of different.
See, I didn't know about this at all until I watched like the Easy Allies review. It was like pretty quickly, like when they were explaining it, and I think that was a specific example they used. Like pretty immediate was like a reaction of, oh, that's awesome, like that is super cool.
Yeah. And so my first thought, I think when I heard about this even before the game came out, was like, oh, that's kind of a way to reuse stages a little bit. But no, like it's completely different. You can there's actually parts during the regular stage that you're like, oh man, like how am I supposed to get up to that that door up there? And it's like, well, I can't get up there. But then actually when you go play the flooded version, you can go swim up there and you can get to it. So it's really neat in that respect. And each of them has their own different soundtrack. So I believe no soundtrack is reused at all. Each level, kind of like Donkey Kong Country, has its own little gimmick, where like you can do, one of them is like called Windmill Way, or something like Windmill Heights or whatever it's called. And it's just like, windmills that are just, slowly spinning, and you can jump on them, all that kind of stuff. But then there's like this fan that you can turn on, and then it's like all the windmills are blowing like crazy. And so when the wind's blowing really hard in that one specific level, like, even if you're running and the wind's blowing real hard, you'll see like Yooka and Laylee like shielding their face, trying to like cover the jaws, like, their cheeks kind of like going like really wide open because the air is like blowing so high. And stuff with other ones, like there's this like sticky stuff that gets into like one of the levels, and it's like you can just see them just like trotting, like whole different new animations of them trying to walk through this stuff. And it's just, it's like it was only just for that one level that they used all of this, but it's not like, it's the kind of same stuff every once in a while. Each level kind of has its different little gimmick. And of course I use gimmick in kind of a positive term, because it really does just create a new kind of way to play the game that's completely different from all these other levels. And like, I'll try not to trash on Mario Brothers again, but it's like, one's a desert level that now has the spiny guys. Like, I'm still normally jumping and doing whatever. There's no like additional gameplay mechanic here. It's just the same thing, just with a different aesthetic and a couple different enemies. Whereas in this game, like it really has that level of detail of like, they really thought out these levels. They're really neat. They each have their own soundtrack, and even if it's a different soundtrack, it's like a revised version of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So like instead of like it being slow, the first like soundtrack, now it's like really upbeat and it's really fast, and they've got different layers of music they put on top of it, and I'm just really impressed with it. I'm kind of taking my time with it with this one as well. I've been going back and making sure I get like all of the twit coins before. It sounds so weird saying that word, but that's what they call them.
I mean,
yeah.
Either way, it definitely seems like it's a massive improvement over
It's a huge
the first
improvement.
game.
This one does not feel like a Kickstarter game to me, whereas the other one clearly did.
Right.
And I mean, hats off to Playtonic and definitely Team 17, who's kind of stepped in and helped publish this game and really kind of helped the original Yooka Laylee, I think, get off the ground as well. But whereas, like, I kind of thought, like, oh, there'll be, like, maybe another Yooka Laylee 2 or Yooka Tui or something like that. Like, this is really excited to see where they take it. And in a way, I don't even know if I want another 3D platformer from Yooka Laylee. Like, give me another one of these games. Give me another 2D side scroller. But it'd be interesting to see where they go.
It's also nice, which you were kind of saying right there, is like after the Yooka Laylee, there was a lot of excitement around it, and then it came out, and generally speaking, the reception was pretty poor, if not negative. And I know you liked it. I know of other people who did really like it a lot. But it's nice to kind of see it have like a second lease on life almost, where they kind of came back and they're like, all right, we're gonna do something a little bit different, and they ended up doing like just hitting it out of the park.
Yeah, and it was really quick between announcement to release, and because I think it was announced around E3, they said it was going to be, I believe they said late 2019, which then made me think like, oh, this is going to be like November, December, like they haven't put a date on it yet, and it ended up being this month, like early October. Really just, you almost kind of wonder, like, I kind of wondered myself, like, man, like, what's going on at Playtonic? Like, because they took forever to get that 64-bit tonic out to the original Yooka Laylee. I don't know if you know anything about that, but it was just going to be a skin that, like, de-resed everything. That was, like, a tonic you could equip that made everything look like an N64 game. And it was like, it took them, like, I don't even know if, like, the Switch version even has it yet. Like, it's been taking them forever to do this. And I'm like, are they even, like, are they working on something new? Are they not? But they clearly have. And I'm super impressed by it. I think it's in a way, like, every year I'm like, oh, that's clearly my game of the year so far. I don't know if I have one yet this year so far. So I'm like, oh, this might be it.
Thinking about it. I was thinking about it a little bit ago. And I mean, it's weird because sometimes I think about like Kingdom Hearts 3 and I'm like, man, that was this year. But I don't know if I would say that is it. Like, to me, it's probably Sekiro. And there's probably something else.
Resident Evil 2.
Resident Evil 2, Sekiro, Kingdom Hearts 3 for me are definitely up there. I think Sekiro probably would be mine. I know there's something I'm just blanking on right now. I still need to finish Fire Emblem. Yeah. And I'm like, that could totally be something that I just really like adore. But really, like, if I think about it, the thing for me, like Luigi's Mansion 3, like I'm super amped for this week. But I really feel like Death Stranding could be the game that like just comes out and it's like, oh, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Sure. But with Yooka Laylee, this is the game that I didn't really have much interest in, and the more I'm hearing about it, the more I'm like really interested in picking it up on a sale. Yeah,
it really is. It really is good.
Only because there's so much other stuff. Like, I would probably buy it full price, but there's just so much other stuff, and my backlog's already kind of crazy. Although it's getting better. It's getting better this week.
And I think it's 30. I think I paid for it. I was thinking it was 40, but I think it's actually 30.
Okay, that's not that bad.
Yeah, for sure. But of course, our game Death Stranding is going to come out. It's going to be Game of the Year.
Can't wait.
I saw a Death Stranding commercial, Curtis, during college football yesterday.
That's how you know it's going to be good.
It's happening.
I'll just leave you with this. You mentioned Joker earlier. This week I went to see a movie called The Lighthouse. Yeah. The second directorial feature from Robert Eggers, who is the guy who directed The Witch. So it's only been a few days, so I don't want to come out here and say The Witch is better, this one's better. I've been saying The Witch is like my favorite horror movie of the past, decade or whatever, right? The Lighthouse is unequivocally the best movie I've seen this year, if not the past few years.
Nice.
It's the kind of movie that like, I don't know if you ever saw Hereditary, but
Oh
Hereditary
my gosh,
like,
I recently just saw that. Yes.
Okay, so like, without being too detailed, right? Like, so the scene in Hereditary after the thing happens and there's some grieving going on. And it's like, I was in the theater watching this movie and it felt so intense that like it was the only time I've ever been like, I need to leave.
Yeah.
It was like such an intense and
Wow.
emotional sequence. But I love that movie. It was like in a good way, right? For The Lighthouse, there's a lot of like monologues, right? There's a scene relatively early on where Willem Dafoe's character is like giving this monologue, and it's so well done, like so well done, that I wanted to just stand up and applaud. The
Citizen Kane style.
Yeah, the performances in this movie are like out of this world good.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. Like I was like, I left and I was driving home listening to a review of it and like the person like recounting the things that they liked, and I was just like laughing, just like yes. It is good. It's excellent. But that's all we got this week. Collin, the next time we record, we'll both have ideally played some bit of Death Stranding.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! I'm ready to connect the world, Curtis.
Tomorrow is in your hands.
Yes, it is. I'm gonna say that every day until tomorrow. I guess
until tomorrow is in your hands. That's what I'm gonna leave you with. Thanks for listening, everybody. Collin, thanks for joining me. We'll be back.
Thank you, Curtis. Bye-bye.